listen, I saw some of the things that you've been dealing with and working with and the people you've been treating. So why don't we start with those people? Tell me over the last few days what you've been facing and who you've been treating.
We had a pretty dramatic escalation in casualties sort of over the weekend, really. And it's only just started to slow down. I think our worst night was Saturday night. It's mainly all bomb and blast victims, so people who have basically been blown up. But what we've been seeing really is the sort of injuries that occur after a bombing. You either, in the force of the blow, you lose limbs, or some of the surrounding masonry or bit of car or whatever's near you gets whipped up and ejected at you at quite a high volume. And those missiles are basically causing penetrating wounds of any part of the body. Normally, if they hit the head, chest, or abdomen, it's fairly much game over straight away. But we are picking up most of the limb injuries, which are survivable. How survivable depends on, how much damage has been done, but immediately most of them are survivable and they're being brought into us. I I would definitely say that 50% of what we're seeing is in children, and it appears to be in small children, so under the age of sort of 10, 11. We've
And
got a lot of kids under that age.
and is that because of their bodies being smaller, finer, because they're not fully grown yet? Is that why so many of them are children?
I think for the starter, half the population here are children. So you have a 50% chance of hitting a children if you start bombing the area. But what we noticed when we were here in August was there was a real preponderancy for children between the age of about 3 and 7 to be affected. And the feeling was that if you're under 3, your parents will often pick you up. You're often in their arms anyway. So they grab you and run. And anyone over sort of 10 basically has a little bit more awareness and knows when a bomb goes off and what to do. And it's that tranche between 3 and 10 that are disorientated and left to fend for themselves. And they are really the targets here.
You said there that a lot of the injuries you're treating are likely to be survivable. Why only likely? Is that because of their severity or because of supplies you don't have or conditions you're working in?
So it's multifactorial, really. One of the deaths that we had 2 nights ago was purely down to equipment, in that we didn't have the facility to run the observations that we would normally have run in the UK, in terms of being able to turn around basic laboratory tests like a full blood count, like renal function tests. We also don't have a huge amount of blood here, so giving somebody a blood transfusion is not done in the timely fashion that it
Yeah.
is in the UK, and that has let us down with patients. It's if you come in a critical condition, it's very difficult for us to support you. Then, coupled with that, we have the problem of malnutrition, which means that what we're starting with is people who are very deficient in basic nutrients, vitamins, minerals. So, cell turnover and the power to heal has been hugely affected by the number of days that these people have been without food. And on top of that, they're more susceptible to infection because of the malnutrition. And with the supplies that we have a very limited array of antibiotics to combat that. So it's multifactorial, but all avoidable if we were in different circumstances.
Have you seen malnutrition bordering on starvation?
Yes, definitely. We had a chap 2 days ago that we had booked to debride a large burn on the back of his arm and his back. And when he got to the operating room, he was so cachectic, really thin, just skin and bone. And his hemoglobin had dropped significantly, that we felt that if we put him to sleep, there was a chance we wouldn't be able to wake him up. So we had to defer the operation until we could transfuse him and try and get him into a better state for surgery.
And how urgent was that surgery in your view in more normal circumstances? You'd have done it immediately, would you?
It needed to be done.
Yeah.
It wasn't he wasn't going to die if we didn't do it there and then, which is why we had the opportunity to delay the surgery. But if he'd have walked into a hospital in the United Kingdom, he would have gone straight onto the emergency list and would have been done within the next 3 or 4 hours.
I've seen social media clips of you and other medics working in different hospitals, and what strikes me, apart as well as your words and the stories that you're able to tell us, is the noise in those hospitals, the noise in and around. I mean, there was one clip I saw, a different doctor, not you, and all you could hear was what I think were drones above the
Yeah.
hospital. How difficult is that, or are you able to block that out? Because that must be very none of us likes constant noise, do we, in dreadful circumstances or any circumstances?
I think during the day we are able to block it out because we are concentrating on what we're doing. There's a few bombs that have gone off where everybody in the room's been a bit concerned that it was quite close, and
Yeah.
obviously you're always anxious that somebody's going to come in and say, right, you've got to go. But really, it's when we stop and we're sort of back where we're sleeping, and the constant drones in the background and then bombings it's very, it's sleep deprivation, really.
And how do you cope? And I know you're going to say it's not about me, it's about the patients. Of course it is. But you're in it and you're in an extreme set of circumstances. How do you maintain your ability to function and to stay well yourself in those circumstances?
Well, I've done it before, so I feel like I've got a routine now. I do spend quite a bit of time before I come out here trying to make sure I'm in the best physical shape that I can be. But really, the way that I'm getting through this is to try not to dwell on it too much and just to do the job that I came here to do. Because I think if I give this any more space in my brain, I will not be able to cope with what I'm seeing and what's going on. I think for me, really, it's why it's still going on that I'm finding hard to deal with.
The statement I'm sure you've heard about today, the statement that's come from France, Canada, and the UK, putting pressure on Israel, more than urging Israel to stop the bombardment. Does that? I guess you welcome that statement. Does it feel too late? Tell me your reaction to it.
Well, I welcome it a lot more than I think some of my colleagues have, in that it's a turning point, and I have felt on this mission that there has definitely been a surge in the public's interest in what is going on over here. And it certainly feels to me as if more and more people understand the situation better and can see that this is not right. This is a humanitarian crisis, and this is not the way to sort out a dispute over a piece of land. So I am very pleased that we're turning the tides, but we've got a long way to go and we need to stop it.
And you talk there about the lack of food, the war going on around you all generally. What about medical supplies? That, I mean, presumably they are part of the aid difficulties as well. So talk me through how that's affecting the work you're able to do.
Yes, so there has been a complete blockage of medical aid at the same time that the food was blocked. So we haven't had any new supplies to any of the hospitals. There has been some bartering going on because obviously the big NGOs do stockpile bits and pieces, and certain NGOs have a surplus of some things and others have a surplus of others. But we're now in the point where it's really not a surplus, you're trading with them to try and keep each hospital going. We sent a team 2 days ago back to the European Gaza hospital, which was bombed on Tuesday and Wednesday, and I think Thursday as well. A team went back in to try and reclaim some of the kit. We had two members of our team there the week or during the bombing and the week before, and we'd taken quite a lot of kit in. So we sent some of the team back to recoup that. And obviously now I'm at NASA. They've put a grab bag together for me because we're in the we're just on the border. We're about a K and a half from the active fighting. And there is a feeling that we will probably have to evacuate within the next 5 days or so. So the team have put all my equipment in a bag in the storeroom so that if we do have to evacuate, I can take that kit with me to wherever we can set up next.
And patients in those circumstances?
Most of the patients get evacuated at the same time. What happened at the European Gaza hospital was we had some warning, and you find that the United Nations and the surrounding sort of population come together, and all the patients that can self-evacuate, self-evacuate. What happened at the European Gaza was that we were left with 6 intensive care patients that we couldn't move. And then one by one, over 48 hours, they were put in ambulances and transferred to local NGO field hospitals. Some came to NASA and some to other hospitals in the vicinity. So that's sort of the way that the evacuation would go. But the problem that we have now is that we are at a critical point with fuel. So we know that the ambulance service here, what we're calling the ambulance service here, possibly only has another 48 to 72 hours worth of fuel before it runs out.
Can I ask you what drew you to this work in this place?
I I worked at King's College Hospital, and one of my colleagues, Graham Groom, who's often on our videos, he worked for a charity that was doing a lot of work out here before the war to try and help with the numerous injuries in the sort of battles that occurred before this one. There was a lot of gunshot wounds to legs, and he was running a program to try and deal with those. And I came out to try and help train a plastic surgeon,
Right.
Ahmed Makhalati, who then came back to the UK with me and worked with us for 2 years. I had no intention of coming out in a war zone, but he came back to Gaza to take the head of plastic surgery post at Shifa. And when the war broke out, he started sending me pictures of what he was doing. So I felt I needed to come and give him a hand.
Well, listen, thank you very much indeed for speaking to us today, and I wish you the very best with everything you're doing. It sounds like very, very hard work, which I know is an understatement, but thanks for taking the time to speak to us.